Hello everyone, welcome to Primetime ZW. It is powered by Business Times. My name is Farai Makutuya. Today we are discussing a topic that I'm sure will be of great interest to many of the people watching this podcast. We're talking about procurement. I think it is a very topical issue, a great opportunity for Zimbabweans to participate in the economy of this country. And I know obviously people are always talking about tenders and getting business and that sort of thing. So we'll be discussing that and unpacking some of those issues on today's edition of the program. To help me do that, I'm joined by a representative from the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, that is PRAZ. He is the Corporate Communications Officer, Mqhele Tshuma. Welcome to Primetime.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. I always like to say, let's not take anything for granted. So very briefly, to set the tone, and for those who may not know who PRAZ is, briefly, who is PRAZ and what do you do?
PRAZ is the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, which is a regulatory body established to manage and regulate public procurement in Zimbabwe. In brief, what we are saying is all the state-owned enterprises or government-related ministries and or MDAs, they actually come through PRAZ in terms of their procurements, facilitation for that, and making sure that whoever then they deal with, they are also regulated through the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act, which is the PPDPA Act, which ordinarily is the national policy or the national act that is regulating public procurement. So this is our mandate, and we have a broader mandate in that order, where we're saying as much as we are regulating public procurement, we go then deeper to make sure that those who are within the field of public procurement are then capacitated by PRAZ through the PRAZ system, making sure that we train them. We make sure that we also have adequate, systems, especially like right now we moved from the manual system to the electronic procurement system. It's part of a mandate where we are saying we need at every turn to make sure that the procurement professional is equipped accordingly. So that's part of our broader mandate.
Indeed. We'll talk about EGP and your electronic procurement shortly, but I just want to understand, state-owned enterprises come through you. Is it not, I'll give a very, sort of raw example. If I am an enterprise that is engaged in transport, for example, I would imagine we are the experts. I know who the transport providers are. Why am I having to come through yourselves as a third party? Isn't it much easier if that entity just procures on its own because this is their field, this is their sector?
That's right. So what happens within the space of public procurement is that we always seek to make sure that the cake is spread to everyone, and everyone has an equal opportunity to participate and have their fair share within these systems. Remember, public procurement is an act of public funds. So these funds need to be spent accordingly and in accordance to a regulated approach. Imagine with the example that you gave, you know of a supplier who can give you the direct transport. But in public procurement, we have stages of how we procure, where there's direct procurement, as it were. There is obviously competitive bidding, which is the most encouraged one. But we have seen that in the abuse of systems and corruption and or even manipulation of procurement systems, people then tend to go for direct procurement because probably there's something through the link that I've given you business that I'll benefit from by giving you direct business, which is not supposed to be the case. We are saying, let's go competitive. Hence, you realize that most of these entities now, they publicize all their procurements. Whatever they want, their tenders, they are published through mainstream media platforms. And when they do so, it opens up for everyone to have an equal opportunity to participate. This is coming from a background where we're saying we need to lessen manipulation in public procurement. Because if I give you direct business, everything gets lost.
All right, fantastic. You spoke earlier as well about your broad mandate, which is to equip the procurement officers.
Sure.
We've seen you doing quite a lot of training countrywide. What is it, when you say equip, what is it that you are training these procurement professionals on?
Okay. So for starters, what we've realized is that procurement is a changing field. And there are new things that come along as we move each time. So as that is happening, we have realized that even the mandate that we have as PRAZ from the PPDPA Act is a mandate which most people still do not understand, or now they understand, but they still do not know how to maneuver around certain procurements. So you find that lately, as an example, someone just goes, online, gets an AI specified product, and in short, It's just someone who's looking at a certain product and just not name it. But in short, you can tell this person is describing this kind of a product. Yes. So we are trying to say we are equipping them in most of these things to say what are the gaps that are there within the public procurement space. And one of those things that started in the early 2021, 2022 was a needs assessment kind of a platform to say, as we get into this particular field, what are some of the gaps that are existing within public procurement? And one of them that we discovered was a very interesting one where, if someone within your workspace is seemingly not having much to do, you just send them to town to say, can you go and look for 3 quotations in town and come back?
Yeah.
So it tended to be like a backdoor kind of an office job or something like that. But with then this equipment, the equipping that we are doing ourselves, we are then saying, no, let's go ahead and make sure that this is a professional who has gone even to school, who has appreciated some levels of, whatever is pertaining in the industry. Then we equip them as to how then you come and operate within the frame of the public procurement and disposal of public assets. You realize the reason why we do so is that most of the court cases lately have been cases that are having to do with public procurement or procurement, as it were. The reason is someone would have just gone extremely wayward, if not totally dismissed everything around whatever is stated and how they should do their procurements, and then they miss that opportunity. The next best thing that comes, probably they did it in sincerity, but not knowing that they are breaking the law. And when we get there, finally, they have to play a role in institutions that is advisory to the accounting officer. The accounting officer may be the top person in that institution at the level of a permanent secretary, as a CEO, general manager, just to name other people. So with that in mind, you are realizing that it's something that people need to understand and say we equip them based on the fact that we do not want them to get lost within the procurement space. We want to always work with them properly, and as and when, at what point do they approach our institution for regulation? At what point do they write a letter of condonation? What would have happened? What are some of the gaps that are now there? If they want to do a direct procurement, there's an emergency. It's appreciated because it's situational. There are certain then nodes that the regulator appreciates to say, no, this one, they're doing it in good faith based on 1, 2, 3, 4. But if it then goes beyond reasonable doubt that you are no longer doing it in good faith, it was now your general norm, the courts will always be there. Hence, we always even have MOUs with such institutions like ZAC, so that we then process those kind of things, make sure that this professional is actually at every turn doing the right thing in every other step that is correct.
You mentioned 3 quotations, which I think, is something people are very familiar with. But as we do this, and as you said, it is an evolving field, an industry that is obviously evolving. Is it always the case that when I get 3 quotations, it is always the cheapest one that will get the bid?
It's not always the case. There are some people probably that participate in these public procurement, issues. And one of them probably you say, probably they didn't give you a good job previously. Or as a recommendation from others before, it wasn't one of the best in terms of their supply. Probably they delayed supplying, probably they delayed in 1 or 2 things. Their product wasn't up to the quality that you expected. So there are some recommendations that are then made despite the price issue. Because the price issue, of late, we've tended to realize that if you go for pricing, most people then are just doing it for the sake of acquiring, but they do not have the capacity at times. They just want to get the tender. But when they've received the tender, let's come to supply. They don't have the capacity. They are struggling to facilitate for all those things. So it's some of those things where we've realized that it's not the cheapest pricing at the end of the day, but it's about the quality also of the product. Ultimately, there's value for money that we're looking forward to. If you're talking of value for money, you're not just talking about it in isolation. The value to society, it proceeds that far. Because if you are realizing lately, looking at things that can be utilized until potentially the last dot, where you're saying, okay, as much as I've, say, for example, you brought a container from China, someone says, I just want my goods inside. Someone says, no, I actually want the container itself. I can utilize the container it's on for whatever. Someone says, after you are done with your container, no, I want to melt all the metal that is there. Someone wants, until the last dot of the product. Value for money, value to society, and ultimately even to the environment. Because we are now talking about environmental sustainability and governance. Those are some of the issues that also start coming in to say, are the products that people are now buying out there environmentally friendly? Because you need to then say, ultimately, after all is said and done, what was the impact to the environment by the products that we were actually dealing with out there? So it's something that we're also working on now to say, as we move on, we want to encourage all the procuring entities to buy such kind of products, to confirm that, yes, this product is environmentally friendly based on 1, 2, 3, 4, statistics that are out there about it, and then it sustains as we move up the ladder.
You mentioned electronic procurement system transitioning from manual to electronic. Sure. What does that mean in very simple terms?
In very simple terms, we were saying that people were having a lot of bid papers, envelopes, books and whatever to come and submit for their tenders. And now we're saying, do all that in electronic form. All they are doing is just to submit the very same documents they would have brought to institutions. They are just uploading them on the system, and someone then can review those documents from the system. That's what we've simply done. We have eliminated the part where we're saying someone should travel from as far as Mutare, as far as Beitbridge, as far as Victoria Falls to come to Harare to submit their tender documents. All we're saying now is submit from wherever you are. Public procurement has been devolved that far. It doesn't necessarily now need to be within the country's borders, for example. Even if you're outside the country's borders, you still have equal access to see the tenders online. When you see the tenders online, your documents are there within your machine. You then upload and then do whatever is necessary according to plan.
How do you manage those of us who are doubting? In the past, you'd be told the bids are going to be open at 10 a.m. on Friday. You all converge and the boxes opened, and I see for sure that this is done transparently. So on the electronic platform, how is that managed?
It's so what happens is when you submit your tender is encrypted. So the encryption is more like something that will close until such a time when the day of opening, like you are saying, that 10 o'clock time comes, then all of you who had interest in that tender, who participated in that tender, are able to see upon the tender opening at the very 10 o'clock time on that day. You're able to see that, and you're able to see how the evaluation is being done, where you got it wrong, where you got it right. And you can, as much as you get the report later, I would say, from the procuring entity that is in need of your service, but within the space of the tenders being opened at that time online, you can tell where you missed it. Probably you went overboard on price, probably your quality is not up to scratch, probably this and that. You can pick within that space. So in terms of transparency, we are saying if you are opening it all at once, no one had room to manipulate. Even us at PRAZ, we do not even have that room to see who has submitted what. Remember, one of the biggest challenges that was initially there was where if an individual, for example, with the 3 quotations, I'm carrying this envelope, is saying this, you close it, I'm carrying this one, so you submit less of these 2 that I'm having, and then your person then wins. But not anymore with this system. We are saying everyone, whatever they submit remains closed until the day of opening. You are the only one who knows your price.
So in terms of, obviously quite technical encryption, those sort of things, has there been any capacity building around making sure that everyone can participate in this?
Yes, because what we've been doing is that upon the launch of EGP, it was one of those selling points where we're saying transparency is now an issue. So everyone will be worried, if I'm doing it online, how do I make sure that no one sees whatever I've submitted and stuff? You then decrypt upon the tender opening day. That's when everyone then is able to see, okay, this one submitted this one submitted this. Some entities within the mandate of PRAZ are able even to also share who won a tender that was publicized on such a day and what were some of the validations around it, and the cost of the tender is to say it was how much the product was charged and so on. So it's part of the transparency that we're saying people should go all out and also make sure that these things are out there. But to further buttress on that, what we've then done as of 2026, we have then introduced a national standard price list. This national standard price list is to confirm that when you are dealing with those products that you're looking forward to, it's a situation where we are saying to you, you have a price range. It's not a price control, but it is a price range of a product. To say, if you are selling ties, your neckties. Neckties average price is $5. If it is an average price of $5, someone can go, say, 10% below, 10% up. But you cannot sway way below or way after. Well, below is someone's choice, but the range that is now top, then you say, okay, he's gone 100% of the normal standard price. So what do we then do? So it is a guide to avoid also misuse of public funds, because some prices have just been too much to accept that this is a price. But just because it goes to public procurement, someone says, I can now charge whatever figure I want. But we've then managed to say, the introduction of the standard price list should then curb such kind of things, because people have been wayward in terms of pricing.
What's been the uptake since the launch of this electronic procurement system? Have you seen an increase in the numbers?
It's
participants.
I would say it's actually one of those fantastic things. When you launch a product and in the first year you record about 24,000 categories. You are realizing that people are in need, and people actually have been longing for such kind of a service. Because when we launched in 2023, the product was launched by His Excellency the President, and at that time it was, it would be seemingly gloomy. Everyone won't be seeing the rightful thing. What's going to happen? How is it going to happen? But the uptake since 2024, 1 January, has been quite fantastic. It's been one way you're saying, if you ask someone to register, initially what we did was to ask people to upload their documents, to say, you've got company documents that are there existing and stuff, but kindly upload so that we also see the share ownership, so that ultimately we know who are these beneficiaries of these companies. Because most people were the famous thing in Zimbabwe, would some people would just go out there and say, you are my friend, or you're doing this for me, but ultimately we wanted to know the shareholding of those institutions. So the uptake of the electronic government procurement has been quite good. It's something where we actually delayed launching. Some institutions, remember, in other regional countries have been struggling with it also to launch fully. We did a successful turnaround time of a full year. We were up and running with the system. We managed to introduce phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And with that, we were saying, ultimately, we are telling someone from start registration process. We came to issues of contract management. We spoke about all those things within. We are still training people within that system, because we're saying we're developing modules at every other 10 to equip them in the rightful order. So the uptake has been quite good, because we also see some institutions who never thought they would be part of the electronic government procurement system saying, no, we think we need to also learn about how to use this system, because we think it's quite efficient and so on. Yes, people at one point I know spoke about the electronic government procurement to say, it's seemingly something that is closing some gaps in some spaces. So you start off resisting, and the famous saying will go, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
And now the numbers are quite there. We are now even above 372 annual procurement plans from entities who are saying, we want to use the electronic government procurement to show people what we are going to be procuring throughout the year. And you are in a position to see that a certain entity, for example, wants to procure certain products by the month of November this year. And you prepare everything accordingly in good time. So we've given people ample time to say, ultimately, within the electronic government procurement system, you feel at home with everything that is being offered in that particular system. Your tenders are not tampered with. It is actually transparent. We are talking about integrity ultimately to say you can tell what is going on. There's fairness in the whole system, and transparency ultimately tops the whole agenda.
So I want to ask you this. I mean, obviously, you've spoken about the successes and just in general, not just the electronic government procurement system, but from where you are sitting, are there any areas that you think these are challenges or areas for improvement? And I ask this because one of the things I would imagine is in any bidding process, companies that are established, that are bigger, will naturally have an advantage. Sure. Yet we have an emerging MSME sector. So those small guys, the youths, the women, the rural, as you're saying, now you can, participate from anywhere. Do they have a fair chance? Is there any effort to try and level the playing field, or would that be deemed unfair?
Not really. Good part. Last year in 2025, when the president opened his first cabinet meeting, he actually had a clarion call to say regulatory bodies should reduce their prices. It was a long year where we looked forward to such also, because the issue that was being highlighted was empowering the communities, empowering the locals and everything associated, which was quite good because it seemed like, prices were quite high, fair. 2026, 13 January, we managed to get a statutory instrument which confirmed reduction of our registration fees to allow everyone in the economy to participate in public procurement. We used to charge a figure which was 120 per category per calendar year. And now we reduced as much as $50 for a category, where we are saying we're incorporating those who've been formerly marginalized, where we are saying, referring to them as special interest groups. You mentioned them as women, youths, people living with disability, and also the war veterans. So they have an opportunity to also participate in such, based even just on the pricing itself of registration. We charge $60, we charged $75. That's now our maximum. So imagine the increase that, the decrease that we actually had from that. So in terms of allowing these groups to participate, we have done so. We have not just done so in isolation. We have then further engaged the Ministry of Women's Affairs, Ministry of Youth, to bring them closer, to say, as much as we have these, can we also have a record of these institutions or your people that are registered within you, so that we are tracking them also at PRAZ, so that tomorrow when I come here for this interview, I'm well informed to say there are how many youths participating in public procurement, there are how many women participating in these. These are the beneficiaries of these. Going forward, we are also going deeper in the route to say, within the procuring entities, we're also encouraging them to say, allocate a certain percentage to these special interest groups. The reasons are, we want to have good statistics around the subject matter, to say, ultimately, nationally, we need to record to say, okay, if you manage to allocate 10% to people living with disability for procurements, you allocated, because when you are evaluating, you're also looking at who owns this business. So people have declared businesses when they are registering within us to say, I'm a woman-owned, I'm a youth-owned, I'm a people living with disability-owned business and stuff. So when they are doing that, upon evaluation, those are also supposed to be given preference to say, okay, this product can be done by this person. Probably their pricing, or you even negotiate with them to say, okay, give us this product because we want to empower you in this particular order. So we are catering for that in the broader sense.
In terms of, just your ability to track, trace, monitor, and things like that, I do know that there is a push for local content so that we are producing these things that we are supplying. Are you also able to say, okay, of the entities or the tenders or the business that has been provided, X amount has been produced locally, so that at the end of the day, I think what I'm trying to say is, are we able to see how much we are of these products or services we are importing, and how much is actually produced and generated locally? So we see the balance in terms of where we're sitting.
Good part is we've been engaged with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. And we've been in a situation where just recently we had an event where we had invited the Minister of Industry and Commerce to come and talk to these procuring entities. Clearly what you are saying is the fact, where we need to empower locally. And we are also part and parcel of an interministerial group where we're part of, such kind of decision makers to facilitate for local products to be purchased. So the issue again comes back to say, as much as there are products coming from outside the country's borders, we want to empower people locally. do not then give us a product that is not up to standard, because you are supposed to be a local person targeted at empowerment. So you also rise to the occasion, give the product within the best quality that it has or it's supposed to have. And it then goes a long way in saying, okay, locals are also benefiting from this. Because ultimately, where we then maybe fall short is to say, if the product is then substandard, then the local industry suffers. That's where the issue comes in. And also remember, with specifications, you are supposed to meet whatever has been specified. So if a product cannot go lower than what you've also prescribed, to say this is what we are looking for. So with the Ministry of Industry, we're working closer with them, and we're always making sure that at whatever turn, we try and also talk within the language of Buy Zimbabwe. This is where we are.
Fantastic. Very last thing, Mqhele, I do know, certainly from looking at media and stuff like that, that our own CEO of PRAZ here, I think is head of, or was head, I don't know if the tenure is still there, of the Continental Procurement Group. And recently there was also, I think, a regional Continental Procurement Conference. What are the issues, the challenges and opportunities we've spoken about here? Are those the same conversations that are happening at a continental level? Are these the same challenges?
The challenges are quite interesting, because most of them are universal. So the good part is, if you then bring those procurement professionals under one roof, you find that they speak the same language. The issue is, how then do we work together? Because there's an issue of cross-border trade. Probably some of the laws within a certain country and Zimbabwe are not the same. They're not universally speaking to each other and so on. So there's need always a clarion call to be requesting for such to say, let's harmonize and make sure that our regulatory issues are within the good space, so that no one then is disadvantaged from that perspective. So you were saying initially, the CEO of PRAZ, Dr. Ruswa, was the president or chairman of the African Public Procurement Network, 2025-2026. It's been a very interesting term where you are saying to bring together those experts to come and talk the same language. He introduced monthly webinars so that people keep closer to the issues. If in case it's something that is you're facing that side, how are you resolving your issues that end? Probably we can copy, share the notes, and speak the same language. So there's been then from that as a learning lesson to say, from the continental body itself, there are regional groupings that include the EAC, where they have their own gathering annually to speak their unique problems and resolve issues there. He then sat down sometime last year to say, let's also have a Southern African Public Procurement Forum, which is an event that we recently held, and an event that we are saying, from the Southern African perspective, we do have all these issues coming universally. What do we do? How do we gather and talk? Let's make ourselves formal in this order, so that whenever we are speaking, we then feed into such kind of groupings that are looking at regulating public procurement, say within the continent itself, and manage ourselves from there. We are in a position to also feed the African Continental Free Trade Area and be part and parcel of that conversation in a very good way. So if procurement has taken its position, everything can easily flow going forward. These are some of the elements that have come through with saying, even benevolence on its own. Having been part and parcel of the African Continental Free Trade Area, you realize that there's APPN, which is the African Public Procurement Network. Broader, this whole issue brings a lot of interesting aspects, where you're saying, what do you get from there? Everyone then looks at Zimbabwe to say, we really want to see what Zimbabwe is offering. When we hosted the General Assembly of the APPN, we managed to gather 42 nations of the continent.
Wow.
And this was not just coming in vain. It was coming with a broader aspect. And we are saying, what then is Zimbabwe doing in all these aspects? This year, late last year rather, up until early this year, we had something that was called the methodology for assessing procurement systems. In ordinary sense, we are saying the benevolence that I was talking about from APPN and so on. What comes on board is to say that rating comes in within 18 months, standard internationally. In Zimbabwe, we did that in a record 8 months. The assessment was done. So if that then comes, it was only to say structurally, how is Zimbabwe managing these things. You find that structurally we managed then to tick all the boxes, not by choice or anything, but we gave all the consultants room to do their job, but they managed to complete within 8 months, meaning they were not facing any challenges in assessing whatever we were doing in public procurement. So as a result, we are growing and moving forward.
Fantastic. Mqhele Tshuma, thank you so much for coming through to the program. It's been a fantastic discussion, I think eye-opening, and I think quite a lot to take away from this, and very encouraging that regulatory fees have been reduced. Now there's greater participation, more transparency, I think is the key thing that most people are worried about. But thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much for the time.
And that does it for Primetime ZW. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to get in touch with us, engage with us, our platforms on social media and digital media are on your screens right now. Get in touch with us. Would love to hear from you. Until next time, it's bye for now.